Although Germany's Nazi regime fell some 8 decades ago, reverberations from that reign of terror echo to this day. Here's Barry Petersen.
Few who see Picasso's The Actor at New York's Metropolitan Museum of Art know its complicated history.
It used to hang in the home of my great-grand-uncle, Paul Lefman.
Lefman, a German-Jewish businessman, sold it in 1938.
He needed money to escape the Nazis.
Did they get out?
They did get out and they did survive, but not all of the family did. Back in time,
Laurel Zuckerman represents Lefman's heirs, who have fought for the painting, worth as much as $100 million, claiming it was sold under duress. Sold under duress?
Yes.
Which means?
If there had not been Nazi persecution against them, they never would have sold it.
Yet, 2 American courts disagreed. But for other cases, the tide may be turning. An Amsterdam museum returned Odalisque by Henri Matisse to the heirs of Albert and Marie Stern, saying it was sold under duress. The Sterns had tried to escape, but most of the family died in concentration camps. And in a historic policy shift, the French Parliament recently unanimously approved a law fast-tracking the return of art to families who claim it is rightfully theirs. Why? What's the motive here?
To recognize what happened and to help families to get their works.
David Zevi of the Culture Ministry heads the mission for research and return of Nazi-era looted property.
We have to know the history because they should be in the rightful owner's hands, because they are the last witnesses of what happened during the war. These works are like the witnesses of the persecutions.
I think there finally is political will to recognize that this is part of belated justice.
8 decades later, justice.
Yes, quite belated.
University of Denver professor of history Elizabeth Campbell wrote about the complicity of the French and other European governments in keeping what the Nazis stole. She says there could be even more change, with new guidelines agreed to by France and other countries, including the United States.
These new guidelines say that any persecuted person who sold a work of art during the Nazi era should be assumed to have done so under duress. So it's now giving a blanket acknowledgement of coercion in any sale. So it's really a dramatic change.
I don't think you've been properly introduced.
When the Germans retreated,
Sam, it's your neighbor, Mr. Rembrandt.
as shown in the movie The Monuments Men, Allied art experts found stacks of stolen paintings everywhere from caves to castles. More than 60,000 pieces of art were returned to France, but some 2,000 pieces ended up in limbo, held by the French government with no clear rightful owner.
So this is maybe a painting which was not that
We met Inez Waterman
unusual,
Reynard
and there are
in
others,
front
so
of one such painting at the Musée d'Orsay in Paris.
There's really a huge wish now by the French to clarify the situation.
As the museum's newly hired provenance researcher, her job is to find the truth about a piece of art's Nazi-era past.
It's somehow as if you take a detective, you say, look at all the cold cases which happened 80 years ago and solve it. Each story is important, and it is worth for each family to do this effort.
But the case of Armand Dorville has pitted the French government against his heirs, among them Francine Kahn.
Discovering those pictures, it's a way to know him.
And Raphael Faulk.
I feel anger when we have so much difficulties to retrieve them.
When Dorville died of natural causes, his art collection was sold at auction. But due to anti-Semitic laws, the French authorities confiscated the proceeds, and family members, without money to escape, were later murdered at Auschwitz. 80 years later, a North Carolina museum returned one of Dorville's paintings to the family, and a German museum returned one by Impressionist Camille Pissarro. But the French government is refusing to give back more than half a dozen paintings held in public museums, saying the auction was not done under duress.
It must be hard for them to give them back. So I can understand that, but it's just right, you know, it's just right.
Right to give them back to you.
That's right.
This one was at the Louvre.
The family hired Paris lawyer Corinne Herskovich, who has spent 30 years recovering art for Jewish families.
All these people in charge of the cultural heritage, they were more concerned by keeping alive or preserve all these paintings and works of art than to preserve the Jews.
Do you think some of these museum directors are still ashamed of how they got these paintings?
I think so. I think so. They are embarrassed, that's for sure.
I could imagine
The
it.
Dorville heirs believe
this
they are
kind of
fighting for their
dinner.
history. When you get them back into the family, do you feel somehow that bad history has been corrected, erased?
Not erased, never erased. Members of our family died because of it. In my mind, it's a way to repair the damage that was done.
It is the memory of the family, because it was totally forgotten. And it is on our shoulder to awake this story.
To tell the story.
Yes, to tell the story.